Today I am here with a very good friend of mine, Alan Asriants. Did I say that last name right?
You actually nailed it.
Oh, unbelievable. I thought I was way off. And I was like, I never asked you in the 2 years I've known you.
You did a good job.
Alan and I met back in, I want to say January of 2023 or February, around that time frame, on Twitter. We messaged back and forth. We hopped on a phone call. And then we said, let's meet up in person.
Yep.
First time we met, you came up to Connecticut.
Yep.
Video content day. We shot that, did dinner afterwards, some of our friends. And then I think a month later, I went out to Philly.
Yep.
Got an Airbnb. We ended up hosting, I think, a happy hour at that time. And we started doing business together. Got to know each other. Got to know your wife. More about you over the last year and a half, 2 years. And it's been an awesome friendship. Very, similar backgrounds, although we're not the same ethnicity.
Yeah.
But love what you're about. Love you. I don't even know if that was the right word. It sounded right. Nationality might have been the word. I don't really know.
Yeah, nationality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm way off. But so tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, how you got started in the real estate business, investing in real estate, now as a broker as well. Lead us off.
All right. You want to start with my ethnicity?
Yeah. By the way, I will fact check that word in the future.
No. So yeah, I'm from Philly. Grew up in Northeast Philly. Now I currently live in Bucks County. I did.
We're in Bucks County.
Ben Salem.
Awesome.
Yeah, just like a small little town right outside of Northeast Philly. Just a suburban little area. But yeah,
Where'd you go to high school?
Went to Abington Friends School. It's a private school up in Jenkintown.
Awesome.
And then went to Penn State for 4 years. That was a ride.
Let's go. Would you study at Penn State?
Electrical engineering. So did everything completely opposite of what I'm doing now.
Wow.
But yeah, I did that for 4 years.
How'd you like Penn State?
Well, Penn State was a ride. Penn State was fun. It was awesome just like having all the people same age in like one little town. It was like
College Station?
State College.
State College, okay. Yeah, I always get that confused with Texas and A&M.
Yeah, it was just like a camp for grown-ups that cost $100,000.
Yeah. That is crazy.
So yeah, it was an expensive but really fun camp. And yeah, studied electrical engineering for 4 years. I don't even know why. My cousin did it, so I was like, yeah, well.
No way.
I was just.
Oh, so you didn't have plans on doing it in high school or like when you got started? You kind of just fell into it.
I mean, 18 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of kids fall into that trap. And a lot of people like go into college thinking that they need to go to a certain degree or do certain things. And, I didn't know better. My grandfather was an engineer. My father was an engineer. My cousin was an engineer. And so like, I just kind of, just followed suit, so to speak. And he seemed successful in it. So I just did it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you graduate, start working in the engineering field. Where are you at that point?
So I think like a month after I graduated, I worked at a place called Vanderweel for 6 months. Hated it. It was just like behind the desk, like designing like MEP drawings, like putting lights and fixtures in places. It was just very computer based.
Yeah.
No like social interaction, not too much of that.
Yeah.
And then I went into a engineering sales position, and I stayed there for 2 years. And then COVID hit, and I started listening to like BiggerPockets podcasts. I started like reading more books about real estate investing. I actually did Amway for a little bit. That's how I really got started in this whole real estate
What
thing.
is Amway?
Amway is multi-level marketing. It's
Gotcha.
Have you ever heard of Cutco? Cutco
Yeah,
Knives?
of course.
It's like that.
No way.
So like, yeah, I would go to these meetings where they'd say the same thing over and over again for like 30 minutes. And then you would just come back next week and they would say the same thing.
Oh my God.
And then you bring your friend to hear the same thing.
Enough.
And then, but they forced you to read a little bit of books. They forced you to read like some sales stuff. And little by little, I kind of started seeing and learning a little bit outside of the current trade that I was in. So, yeah.
Unbelievable. How'd you get into real estate?
Well, I hated my job. And my dad was in real estate for forever. He's been an agent since 2000, broker since like 2004, I believe. Opened his own brokerage. He had a few investment properties beforehand, so I knew all about it. I just wasn't really a fan of the commission model. I was like, hey, like I'm working all these hours, and I'm not even getting paid. And I actually had my first deal while I was in Penn State, but it was like some cruddy $72,000 deal that paid for my alcohol. During Penn State, and then quickly realized that being at a job and going 9 to 5 and working my tail off, it didn't matter how much more I worked or what I did. Everything relied on this guy with glasses as the CEO who would tell me, are you getting a raise? Are you not getting a raise? Are you fired? Are you hired? And so a lot of it was out of my control, which I didn't like. So I just I started to I have a specific image of him. That's why I said it. But no, I just didn't like it. I just was very frustrated with my life.
So something changed for you from going, wanting the safe job salary. Dad was always commission.
Yeah.
Eat what you kill.
Yep.
To you, after working in corporate America for a year, 2 years, like, this is not for me.
Yep.
I want to go out and be a hunter, aka eat what you kill.
Yeah. And it was like whatever at that point. It was just like, it was me finding that path. And at first it was this Amway multi-level marketing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then it transitioned to like, well, that's like, it was kind of culty and stuff. And so I kind of transitioned out of it. I sold a few houses to actually some of my coworkers and managers. And then I got the commission check and I was like,
whoa.
Yeah, holy crap. Like, this is legit. This is real. Immediately took that check and put it on a down payment on a house. And then that's how I got started. COVID hit. So we started working from home. I had all this time. So I was calling clients, scheduling appointments, like people didn't see what I was doing, and just leveraged my time super well. So my commute was gone. I had way more time to kill.
You're an only child, right?
Yeah.
Dad is from
Uzbekistan.
Gotcha.
Mom is from Moscow.
Yep.
So Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It was the same country back then.
Yeah. When did they come here?
93.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you were born here in 97, 96.
Yep. So a couple of years later.
And Dad started when in real estate?
He bought his first investment property in 99, and then I think he got his license in 2000.
Gotcha. So 6 and 7 years after moving here.
Yeah. Yeah. He's taxi driver, kind of, did everything. Pizza guy, whatever he needed to do.
To get it done.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So COVID hits. You bought your first property. What kind of property was that?
It was a triplex in Fox Chase, which is a cute little town in Philadelphia.
Still have it?
Yeah. Yeah. I still own pretty much all my properties except for the one I bought. But yeah.
Which one did you flipped?
Yeah, like it was a wholesale deal that I grabbed. It was not an area that I wanted to hold on to, and I just sold it right away. Just made a quick profit.
So the 3-family in Fox Chase, what was the second deal you did?
Then I did a 2-family in Torresdale.
Yep.
Immediately after that, I bought the house across the street because the agent called me.
Yep.
And it was just a coincidence, and so it worked out.
That was your third deal?
That was my third deal.
Yep.
My fourth deal was like a
house hack or no?
It turned into kind of a house hack. I lived in there for a little bit, and then I moved out, and I currently rent it out.
Is that Parker?
It was Parker.
Yeah.
It was a twin in Parker. Fifth deal was a flip that failed that turned into a long-term rental.
You did a wholesale in between. Didn't you wholesale a deal in between there? Or no?
Yes. That was the year prior, I believe. I used that money to buy the third deal.
Gotcha.
Actually. Yeah.
And then you had a flip that didn't go well.
Yeah, the flip that didn't go well.
Yep.
And then I bought another property in that same neighborhood as the second and the third one.
Yep.
That was just a long-term rental deal. So what is that? That's number 5,
yep.
I think. Number 6 was...
Where you live now?
Yeah, where I live now. Yep.
And then you got something in the hopper.
And then, now I have one that I'm just gonna kind of completely redo.
Which I'm excited to talk about.
Yes.
Because I know about the first 6, but this one, not a little bit. I know it's a bigger project.
Yep.
Let's talk about each one. Dive in really quickly. General, like, how you bought it, what you were thinking about when you bought it, what you were thinking about when what you were thinking about going into it? The first one, do you have analysis paralysis, or you got the commission check from selling that property and right away you were thinking, I need to buy real estate?
No, I did the numbers on it, and I would be at my job like on like a piece of paper like this, just like looking at deals online and just doing the numbers, cash on cash returns, and just everything that I was reading. And then, this one came by. It was actually, I was showing it to clients of mine who didn't want to buy it. I thought it was a good deal. So I called up my dad. He walked through. He said, this area is great. Buy it. So it was a FHA deal that I was planning on house hacking. After I bought it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do all the floors myself. I'm going to do the cabinets myself. I'm going to do all this crap myself. Started tearing down a wall. And I think like one wall and like the carpets took me like 3 days to do. And then realizing that all the electrical is wired incorrectly. All the heating is wired incorrectly. It's one heater. Nothing is separated. And I was like, I'm not doing the siding
2-fam?
myself. This is a 3-fam.
Oh, gosh, yep.
And then I'm not doing siding myself. I'm not doing this roof myself. I'm not doing these windows myself. And so that went from like, in my head of being like a $30,000 renovation, doing it myself in like a couple of months, quickly into $180K.
180.
180, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How'd you fund that puppy?
I sold a lot of houses.
Yeah.
I sold a lot of houses, and I was working at the same time. So I had double the income. It was a lot more. And, to be frank with you, my dad fronted me a good chunk of it that I later gave back after I refied it out.
Gotcha.
So
it sounds like a 180. You did a full reno, gut reno, down to the studs.
Everything. I ripped everything
Electrical redone. Was plumbing redone or no?
Everything was redone. Yeah, no.
Wow.
The whole house was just completely...
What'd you buy it for? You remember the number?
210.
You were in it for 180, so you're in it for almost 400.
Yep.
And then what was the ARV when you were done?
It appraised at that time, I think it was like 425.
Yep.
Now it's worth a little bit more. And the COVID boom, because I bought it like the day COVID hit is when I bought it. We were just doing like this weird sketchy closing and stuff like that. So, it was a little bit of a risk at that time to buy it or not. You didn't know what was going to happen, but I mean, it worked out greatly in my favor. So, without COVID, maybe that appreciation wouldn't have been so great, but it still would have been there for sure.
Buy, renovate, refinance, rent it out, and repeat.
Yep.
That's Burr, and that's what you pulled off right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it helped a lot when interest rates were a lot lower.
Yeah.
Because it made deals cash flow. So when you went from you buy it, you refinance it, buy, renovate. When you go to refi and rent it out, your mortgage payment's low enough because rates were lower that you would cash flow positively.
Yeah.
Today we're starting to see some issues where it's harder and harder to do that.
Yep.
So second deal.
Well, it's good that you brought that up because the second deal, when those rates were that low, FHA for a first-time home buyer who never bought anything was 2.25% at the time. And pretty much any deal that you looked at, any duplex, it cash flowed. And I was telling guys, I was like, listen, let me help you out. Get some seller's assist. You only need like 24, maybe 30 grand to buy a very solid turnkey duplex, and you'll make $600-700 a month. And a lot of people at the time, and hindsight is 20/20 for everybody, but it's not a good enough deal. It's not enough cash flow. It's not enough this. It's not enough that. And that was one of those deals that I just ended up picking up as a house hack. It was my second one, so the rate was like 2.75, which is free. Yeah. And even with the mortgage insurance payment with FHA, I mean, you're making incredible cash flow that you can't even find today putting 25% down. So that was just taking advantage of the low interest rates.
Yeah. Before we dive deeper into the second one, what'd you learn from the first property? What mistakes did you make?
Buying older homes.
Yep.
And, buying stuff that's not converted or that is converted versus something that was built as a multifamily is a lot more work than people seem. It's, just because it might have a fancy kitchen or a fancy bathroom, if it's not plumbed correctly, if it's not, wired correctly, if there wasn't a major rehab done, the one that I did within the past 20 years or earlier, it's going to need that. Yeah. And that takes your renovation from maybe $60,000 for like a cosmetic one into 180, but that was COVID. Now that's probably like 280.
Yep.
So your numbers just completely flip-flop and people can get themselves in over their head. And luckily I had a really good mentor in my father, someone who could help me with those funds in the beginning until I refied it out. So it worked out.
Were there permits pulled?
No.
So you bought it without it being permitted?
No.
No, not the work you did previously. Yeah.
Oh no, whatever. So in Philadelphia, a lot of people get away without doing work without permits, and especially during like that COVID time, like so
the city was so backed up.
Yeah, and whenever you order your use and occupancy certificate or whatever, there's no record of you don't need anything besides a clear list of violations. So
gotcha.
If your grass is cut, you're good. Right? So the house could be falling apart inside as long as your grass is cut.
Gotcha. So it wasn't even something on the radar to look at.
What do you mean?
You said it was converted from a single family to a multifamily?
Oh, that part it was.
Gotcha.
That part is permitted.
Yeah.
And that part you have to legally have that. That is a good question. I didn't know where you were going with that. But and a lot of people get burned in the city of Philadelphia like that because a lot of the zoning is single family, but yet it might have been converted or built as a multifamily with that still single family zoning, which is a variance, which is basically like, hey, like we'll let you do this on this specific property. But if you don't keep it up for 3 years or more, then they can actually revert it back. So a lot of people get smoked on that. In fact, with that deal, it actually fell out of contract because he didn't want to get the proper rental licenses to show that it was a legal 3-family.
Yep.
And then he went back to me and said, hey, I got it. I ended up calling the office. They gave it to me. And that's when we went back on their contract.
Variance is pretty much an exception to the zoning laws.
Yep.
Did you have to do that or no?
No, I didn't have to do that. It was it was grandfathered in.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that could be a variance. Setbacks can be a variance. There's a lot of
different variances, and typically, depending on what it is, you're usually going to a land use attorney to help, or a real estate attorney to help you get that variance. Apply with it through planning and zoning. Correct? Is that how it works in Philly?
Yeah, you can do a lot of the stuff on your own, but if you have someone that is skilled and knows what they're doing, you're gonna have a better chance of getting those things approved.
Yep. Especially if somebody works in the town consistently.
Yeah. And you knows the local whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
And the other thing too with the permitting, if you have a newly renovated property, you want to see if there were permits pulled on that property recently.
Yeah.
If there weren't permits pulled, it's an indicator that if a brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, everything looks new, but no permits pulled, the work was clearly done without going to town, getting it approved.
Yep.
And you might run into an issue with it being done the wrong way.
Yeah.
If it's not up to code. And it's something you will inherit if you buy it without permits done. It's your responsibility at that point.
Exactly.
And ignorance typically is not not knowing isn't a solution. You're going to have to get it up to code.
Yeah. And, I would say like 99% of the houses in Philly, and I don't know if this is just Philadelphia specific, because once you get outside of the county and you get into, the suburbs and whatnot, the local townships are a lot more strict. But in Philly, all this work is done, 99% of it without permits.
Yeah.
And I've actually seen permitted work being a lot poorly done than unpermitted work. And I think it's more about knowing what to look for when you're actually looking at a property and understanding. You can't rip out the walls and see what's behind it, but at least, you can have a high-level understanding of how things were done correctly. Yep. Usually you can see that in like things like decking and the structures, like exterior stuff.
Yep.
And I've seen some crazy stuff done with permits that are just absolutely falling apart.
Yep.
Construction deals and
yes.
things like that. Just, inspectors overlooking things and writing things off, turning a blind eye. So happens a lot. So. yeah. It's legit, but you have to know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's where having a good agent does.
This second deal, and by the way, it's experience and being through the process, which makes a good agent.
Yeah.
Too, who's been through it before.
Yeah, I got
6, 7.
Got in over my head on the first one.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, hey guys, like this is what it's gonna be. People think it looks pretty and looks good, but it's a lot more than what you think it is. So
you could do a renovation, new construction, etc. It looks beautiful at the end.
Yep.
But nobody knows you were over time and over budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great looking piece of property, but not making money, or you spent way too much. So it's always funny.
You're always over time and over budget.
Yes. That second deal, what'd you learn from that? I mean, no analysis paralysis. You buy it 2.75. Everybody probably should have bought property at that time. Everyone
should have bought it. And everyone who could have house hacked at that time, I mean, it was a no brainer. I looked at the numbers compared to what my first deal was and how much money I was investing versus how much money I was getting back. I got all my money back in a year and a half. So it's like, it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yep.
And yeah, I told some people did follow suit, and some people really benefited greatly from it.
What were the rents when you bought that? Do you remember?
They were, I think it was like $1,200 and $1,400, and then the garage was rented for like $300. And now I'm getting, I think like $1,650, $1,450, and $320.
Gotcha.
So I increased them over time. But one of the units was vacant because I had to technically live there. So, you know, it was a house hack.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, I bumped up the rents and things kind of went up.
After COVID, we saw inflation with both property appreciation and rents increasing.
Yeah.
So getting a benefit and a boost from that while being locked into a fixed rate payment was huge.
Huge.
Was the garage something that you considered when you bought it, the rental income there?
Actually, I never considered renting out the garage until I saw this listing, and I saw that the garage was actually rented out. And I've never seen anything like that before, but it's storage. You know, there's no one's living there. There's no crazy codes that needs to be amended by. As long as there's no flammable materials or anything that's, you know, dangerous in there. You know, I know the guys that I have, they just store like really fancy cars in there. And it's just like a nice place for them to have their car that's away from the weather and somewhere that they can take care of it.
Yeah. I think there's, in real estate, ways where you're trying to maximize, you know, highest and best use for a property and think of how can I create more income, in renting a garage space is one way to do that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's other ways to produce income. That's a great way when looking at a property is what can I get from something like that?
Yeah.
And you could compare it to what is self-storage cost in that area. Or if you were to store a car somewhere, what would it cost? And then base what you're going to get in rent for that. 320, is that 2 bays? So it's 160 a bay?
It's a two-car garage. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
You
two-car garage with one giant door, kind of.
You rent it to one person?
One person, yeah.
Gotcha. Did you learn anything from that deal?
Just take advantage of that low interest rate, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it was...
Pull the trigger.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer.
Do you ever run into clients, people, friends that have analysis paralysis?
Oh, big time. A lot of times. I think that people... I think the first one is so hard for people to make a jump on because it's a risk that they're taking. It's something that they've never seen before. I think that maybe like me and you, it's a little bit different because, you know, your father did it, my father did it, you know, my family members have done it. So it's kind of just like, well, that's what you do when you get money, right? And so with a lot of people who didn't have family in it, they're like, well, what you do with that money is you save it, or you know, you save it until you can buy yourself a house, or you
Put it in the stock market.
Put it in the stock market, or, you know, whatever, Bitcoin and stuff like that. And so, and I think that a lot of times real estate doesn't look sexy in like numbers wise and idea wise. And I think that they get looped into things like stocks and crypto and, you know, other ways to kind of just make it seem that it's a little bit more fancier. So I think that people just get the analysis paralysis because they don't see the benefit up front, and that, oh, well, I have to wait 10 years for things to appreciate, for rents to go up, for this to happen, for that to happen. So it's different when you're not in it.
You have to be patient.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to make money, especially these days in the first 1, 2, or 3 years. Like, you don't want to underwrite a deal based off of the cash-on-cash return it's going to produce, because you're going to usually buy a property, need to renovate it, dump money into it, have to increase rents, maybe kick out tenants, evict someone, come out of pocket to pay for that. The upfront expenses are going to be high, and then it'll take time to stabilize that property to where it should be with the market. And I always say when you're looking at a deal, you know, your cash on cash is important, yield on cost important, but it's more so stabilized cash on cash, stabilized yield on cost. What will this property produce once it's fully renovated?
Yes.
And that's what you need to look at. Now, it's going to take time, effort, money to get there. But then in 10 years from now, if you look at an amortization schedule on the mortgage, you look at where rents will be. If you factor in inflation, then I think real estate looks so much better.
Yeah.
But nobody looks 10 years down the road. They're looking at today. What does the investment look like?
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right on that. Like, people, they look at it now and they're like, you know, the property might be turnkey. The owner might have had it for, God knows how many years, but they're only renting it out for $800 a month when rent is like $1,800. And they're like, well, the property's not making money. It's not making money. And it's like, well, yeah, but what can it do? You don't want to buy a property that's fully turnkey, because then you're gonna pay for that premium up front.
Yeah.
What kind of things can you manipulate? Where can you improve the property in order to get it to that market rent? Just because it's $800 today doesn't mean it's not going to be $1,800 tomorrow. So
after that two-family, the second one you buy another duplex. You get a long-term rental.
Yep.
Get a DSCR loan, right?
Yep.
What were the details on that deal?
So
how'd you find it?
Well, while I was under contract on the first one,
Yep.
I had an agent give me a call thinking I was the listing agent and asked me, hey, like, you know, what are you guys under contract for on this deal? Like, I want to know how to price this property. And, you know, I want to see how, like, the similarities between it. And I let her know that I'm a buyer's agent, but, you know, let me know what you want to put it up for. And so before she even put it up on the market, she talked to her seller about what a potential list price would be. And, you know, I just gave her what she was asking for. I didn't even want to risk it being on the market for me to have to compete with other buyers. So I gave her exactly what she was looking for with very favorable terms, DSCR, 25% down, and believe it or not, a 4.875 interest rate, no points.
I remember when DSCR was there.
That was, again, no-brainer.
What is a DSCR loan?
Debt service coverage ratio. So it's when your rents cover your payment, and your payment is your PITI payment, which is your principal, interest, taxes, insurance.
Yep. Yeah. So DSC, the ratio is it's an actual ratio of, you know, if your rents are $1,200 and that PITI payment is $1,000, your ratio would be 1.2.
Yep.
And the DSC loan is based off of that. And there's certain ratios for different loans. Some go to 1.25. You need a 1.25. Some go down to 1. Some even go down to 0.75, which is crazy. Usually that's for in-place rents being below the market.
Yeah.
A thing you talked about, negotiation. When you get an opportunity to buy a property off market, I've seen it happen so many times with clients. I did it the first time I ever bought a property. I have not done it since, and I have a story about that as well. But people want a nickel and dime, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 grand to try and save today. If you're buying a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 property, it is not worth it to potentially lose something to put a sour taste in the seller's mouth to save yourself 15 grand because you're trying to get a better deal.
Yep.
You just gave them what they were asking, no questions asked.
Yeah.
It might have been a great deal, but
it was with the structure of everything. It was. I mean, like, maybe I could have pushed them down a little bit. Maybe I could have asked for a little bit less, a little bit, you know, here or there. And my dad wanted to do that, and I was like, look, it's fine. The way it is, it's fine. Just give them what they're looking for, and you know you're gonna get it. Like, you know for a fact you're gonna get it.
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson with my first deal when I was asking for a seller credit, and he was willing to give me $2,500. And instead of me just taking the $2,500, I was like, well, what about 5? And he's like, well, you can kick rocks. You take the deal or don't. And so I lost $2,500. Just kind of, we're all a little greedy. You know, we all want a little bit more. It all depends on whether you're buying or selling. If you're selling, you want more money. If you're buying, you want to spend less money. So it's important to just lock up a deal, $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 even. Like you said, it's not going to make or break it long term.
I've made many, many mistakes. I still do. I literally made a mistake yesterday. But one of the things I realized is you want to make sure the other person feels like they won. So important. Had a deal I was looking at. I buy a piece of property in the area I invest, and it's in July of 2021. I'm down there doing renovations in August, September. I see this guy across the street in his pickup truck. I buy a property with 5 houses on one lot. It's 8 units. Across the street's a 2-family. I like it. I want to buy it. I go talk to him probably in August. I go back. I talk to him in September. I follow up with a phone call a week later, and I want to buy it. And he tells me it's $800,000.
Was this the guy we were on the phone with that one time?
No.
Okay.
Different guy, but that's funny. That was in the car ride? Different guy. That guy was something else. So $800K. I'm like, oof. I'm like looking at the numbers. I'm like, the house is probably only worth $650, $700 compared to comps. Guy, it's $800K. Whatever. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. A month goes by. The property I bought's rented, starting to make money. We're in 2021. mortgage business is going well. I'm making money. I'm like, I've got money to spend, like to invest. Let me call the guy back up. And like, you know what? Like, let's do a deal. Like, let me see, you know, the numbers work. I just don't think it's worth 800. Call him up a month later on the phone. Hey, still interested in selling? Yep. Okay. You still good with the number we say? He said now 900. I go, Jesus Christ. I go, 900? This guy's nuts. I'm like, XYZ, I think that's kind of high. I'll get back to you, and I'll think about it. But you wouldn't do 800? No. Hang up. Call my mom. Now, I had analysis paralysis big time the first time I ever bought a property. My dad had the mortgage business for a long time. My mom was the one who invested in real estate. She's the one that pushed me to buy my first property. Huge analysis paralysis. I mean, I was the nickel and dime guy for $5,000 because, you know, the house needed to be painted. Like something dumb.
Yeah.
So I call my mom up and she goes, this is like the fourth property I'm going to buy. She goes, do the numbers still work at 900? I said, yeah, they still work like great. Yeah, they do work. She goes, well, then do the deal. Why wait? Why push it? I'm like, you're probably right. If I call him back in a month, it's going to want $1 million. Like the guy's, or he's just not going to ever sell to me because I'm just wasting his time, more importantly.
Yeah.
So I call the guy up, tell him I'll do it for 900, and we end up closing at 900. It appraised at like 665.
Oh, wow.
But I bought it at 900. December will be 3 years. It's worth probably over 900. It's definitely worth over 900 now. So it's caught up in value. Who knows if it would have. But the guy felt like he won. I got a deal that made sense numbers-wise. And I wish I did it right away. It would have saved me a little bit of money. But now in the future, if anybody knows him or if he has anything else to sell, he's going to remember a good experience with me.
Yeah.
And give me a call and say, hey, I would sell. Now, he doesn't have anything. But I've also had people I've spoken with that I was under contract with, agreed on a price, deal under appraises. I go back and I ask for a lower the price.
Yeah.
Under contract at 850, appraises at 685. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to come up with pretty much 180.
Yeah.
Or whatever the number is. We fall out of contract. Somebody else closes at 850. Finance 95% loan to value. I'm like, the appraiser, like I should have got into appraisal. I should have hustled more to make it happen. But the guy had a sour taste in my mouth. He probably won't sell me anything again because of that. So you got to think longer term with like not only this deal, but what else does this person have, or who might they know that they'll have a good experience they could refer me to, buy more, etc.
Yeah.
So that's my story there.
Yeah, and a lot of people like with that whole appraisal thing, they see that, you know, the house doesn't appraise, and they're like, well, you know, because the bank says it's not worth it, it doesn't mean it's not, you know, it's not worth it. And so, you know, I've had situations where, you know, people should have come up with that amount of money, but, you know, and on something that was completely done, completely renovated, and, you know, putting in that $50,000 would have been cheaper than going out to the market, buying something that needed a lot of work, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean,
appraisals are subject opinions of value. They're not always right.
Yep.
If they're wrong, you can, the one I bought or was under contract, they both underappraised a ton because they're multifamilies in the area. Investors, not a lot of multifamilies comps on the market.
Yeah.
I've bought like 4 multifamilies, maybe 5 now off market. So there's no comps on market. It's all off. A lot of it's off market. So that's one thing. You could provide comps to try and raise that. The other thing you do is you order a completely separate appraisal, as long as it's not an FHA loan. So if it's conventional, DSCR, et cetera, just get another appraisal if you think the appraiser was wrong and he's not willing to look at comps. So that's another way around that if you don't want to come up with the cash.
Yeah. A buddy of mine did that. First appraisal came in at like, I think he was under contract for 420. First appraisal came in at 320, like $100,000 lower. And then the next appraisal came in at 435 or something like that. And it's like,
what?
It's an opinion, you know, like the guy has a bad day and he tanks your appraisal. He has a great day, he appraises it, you know?
Or it's not even emotion. It's just like they bring someone in from, you know, 60 miles away that doesn't even live there.
Yep.
And during COVID, that happened a lot because everybody was so busy that they might be pulling people from elsewhere.
Yep.
So you want to make sure if you're ordering an appraisal, the lender you're working with has an idea of who the appraiser is going to be. Is it someone local, somebody that knows the market, understands kind of supply and demand in that area? So like, you know, in Philadelphia, if you got somebody from Allentown to come into Philly, it'd be like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Kind of like in Connecticut, if you're buying in Bridgeport and somebody came from Hartford, you'd be like, this guy doesn't know the market.
You don't know these values.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah.
In a completely different market, even though it's in the same state. So that's the appraisal deal.
Yeah, no. But that's a lot of money out of pocket, man. That's but listen, if it's worth it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then third house hack, Parker, twin property.
Yep. Just a 5% down, conventional, super simple deal that is now rental property that brings me like $200-300.
This was recently. This was a
2022.
year. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this was actually over 2 years ago.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. So
Conventional 5% down.
Conventional 5% down. The rate was like 5.25% at the time. This is when the rates started going up.
Yep.
Right. I think it was like February they started going up.
Yep.
So yeah, I kind of jumped on something really quick because I knew every week they were going up. It was nuts.
Yep.
And I just did that and put a little money in it. Redid the bathroom. Redid the floors. And that's it.
So conventional 5% down, different product than FHA, 3.5% down, but you can use them both to buy multifamily properties. The reason why you'll use conventional typically, FHA has lower rates. Mortgage insurance has gotten cheaper over the years. They've lowered it. Conventional, if you're buying a 3 or 4 family, there's a self-sufficiency rule with FHA that states that the market rental income, the gross rental market income, takes 75% of that number, has to be greater than the pity payment.
Yes.
So as interest rates have gone up, that ratio has come out of whack, which forces people to go conventional.
Yeah.
Good news with conventional, the PMI eventually falls off. So there's a little give and take on what makes the most sense.
Yeah. Typically on duplex deals, I do see that the FHA is a lot more beneficial in today's market just because of the difference in the rate, which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think you get hit when you go conventional, when you go 5% down, right? You get hit on the fact that it's a multifamily, you get a higher rate. And the fact that you're putting only 5% down, you also get hit.
The 5%, they're called loan level price adjustments, is like the technical term. The 5% is a little bit, but the buying the multifamily is a bigger hit.
Yeah.
It's a 1 point loan level price adjustment. Probably it turns into like 0.5% in interest rate, roughly, around there. So yeah, it is pretty big.
And FHA, you don't get that.
You don't get that, yeah. And if you have good credit with FHA, the rates are fantastic.
Yeah.
Really good. We're going to dive away from the deals to there's some like general investing questions that I think are super important. Location. You have experience with clients inquiring about location, you investing in different locations. I have my thoughts on why location is so important. And then there's a common foul, like people think buying in certain areas because cash flow is going to be better day one, but they don't realize long term.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on location?
It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's hands down the most important thing. You could buy a little shack on, the best neighborhood in Connecticut or wherever it is. But you know that if you do an addition, you tear it down, you build it up, now you can create way more value. Your ceiling is incredibly high.
Yes.
Whereas if you buy the prettiest property in the crappiest block, you can only go so high up. People are only willing to pay so much for it. And also you get involved with different renter class, different income standards, different credit score standards, higher eviction proceedings, higher maintenance items. And so a lot of people look at stuff and, they get pitched these ideas of, looking at cash flow and looking at things that they think are, the most important thing. But then, when you look at it on paper, it looks awesome, right? Like, look at these crazy returns that I'm getting.
Huh.
But when you actually put it into practice, you're not actually getting those returns because you're chasing down rents, you're filing eviction proceedings, you're fixing up the property every week because it's just poorly maintained. And when those people move out or when you finally get them evicted, you have to redo the whole freaking thing, which is going to cost you the same amount of money as it is if you had a property in the best location, So the labor is the same.
So spot on. You hit on literally all the things I want to talk about. Return on headache is a big thing.
Yeah.
So you talk about tenant quality and the amount of problems you're going to have to deal with. Most first-time investors that I've worked with that want to invest in areas that are not great, I call them the hood, but wherever you want to numbers-wise, cash-on-cash returns are going to be higher in areas that aren't as good. You're going to be able to make more money. Cash flow is going to be higher. You might get 20-ish% return. The problem is, you nailed it on the head. They don't take into account vacancy, evictions if needed, turnover, and then leakage of lost rent, bad debt, not being able to collect it. So all those things actually bring your returns down, but you don't factor that in when you're buying up front. That's a huge one. I think appreciation is, I actually don't have a number on that, so I can't comment there, but I would think long term, you'd rather end up holding the properties in the better neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
And both from a home appreciation, but also rent appreciations. So even though your cash on cash today might be lower buying in a really good neighborhood, rental incomes partially because incomes in regards to like wages will increase faster, will go up as well and follow that. So maybe today it won't be as good a cash on cash return, but over a 10-year period, the percent difference change will be higher, greater in the better neighborhood. So I think that's spot on. I agree 100%.
A lot of people ask me, they're like, well, okay, you buy in this great area. Well, do you think that the rents will ever be $3,000? You know, assuming that the rent is $2,000 today. I'm like, yeah, why not? You know, I mean, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in 3 or 4 years, but 10, 15 years, why not? You know, when people bought their houses in 2005, when my dad bought his investment in 2000, the rent was like $400 a month. Now it's $1,800 a month. That's a way bigger increase than going from 2,000 to 3,000. And so I think people don't understand the power of inflation and how the dollar is losing its value over time. The population grows, there's more jobs, there's more money moving around, more money being printed. It has to go somewhere, right? And you know, it's gonna go into these asset classes. And if the market tanks, if the market goes down, the first thing that goes down is these lower class properties.
Yeah.
The better class properties will be able to absorb it a little bit better, as opposed to the other class.
I agree 100%. Yeah. Well, if you're buying real estate, what are some red flags? What would you advise people to look out for when they're making their first purchase or looking at an investment property?
I mean, hitting back on location. I think that's number one. Buy where. If you wouldn't live there, don't buy it.
Agree. Yep.
You know, if you would live there, buy it all day. And that's just the idea of it. The second is making sure that the property you're buying is not completely dilapidated. Is it like this old conversion of a single family house into a triplex? You know, is it built as a multifamily property? What is the condition of the property you're buying, and how much work does it actually need? What are the things that you're maybe overlooking? And that's something a professional should be able to walk through and tell you, hey, you're walking into this property, you're walking into an endless money pit. You know, whereas this one, you know, it'll be good for the next 10, 15 years.
It's not bad to buy a property like that. You're just saying if it's your first one, you might want to stay away because it's a lot. You're going to take on a lot.
You're going to be in over your head.
Have an agent or a mentor there with you to give you an accurate idea of this was what's going to be needed.
Yeah. And again, if you stumble on a deal where the value is $500,000, you're buying it for $200,000, you don't care what it looks like. Yeah. You're gonna figure
There's
it out.
enough margin there to.
But you know, the reality of today's market is that, you know, you're gonna buy something for $400,000 that needs $150. Well, maybe you just spend $480 and you get something that's ready to go. You know, so you know, knowing that and knowing that you're not going to get yourself too in over your head is important. And what you buy it for, you make money when you buy the real estate, not when you sell it or when you refinance it.
Yeah, so, buy and hold, baby.
Yeah.
Do you sub out your jobs? Do you hire a general contractor? What do you do?
Yeah,
for renovations.
So in the first project, I did I actually subbed out those jobs. So I had my own electrician, my own plumber, siding guy, roofing guy. And then for like smaller scale stuff, you know, like a kitchen renovation, put some floors down, do some spotlights, you know, like a quick 2-bedroom rental update.
Yeah.
It'd just be one guy.
Yep.
So like I don't want to get into the headache of finding a plumber for this, an electrician for this. It's just too much.
Saves a lot of time using a GC.
Yeah.
I use a GC on a recent project. You know, maybe it costs like $60K, but 60, 70. But the amount of time saved over a 8 to 9 month project was huge, especially when it's not your full-time job developing. You're doing like smaller scale projects, renovation, $300,000 to $500,000. I think it's worth buying back that time. If you're doing a, you know, $10 million project and you're going to pay someone, you know, $200K, maybe that's a full-time job and you might want to spend more. But I love the route of going for a experienced general licensed contractor.
Yeah.
100%.
especially if you don't do it day in and day out.
Correct.
You know, if that's not your gig, you're not a flipper, you're not a full-time rehabber, you know, you sell loans. Like that's your main business, right? You're in Philly, you're in Connecticut one day, you're talking to this client, you're talking to this realtor, you know, like going out and managing that project, you have to be there every single day.
100%.
Every single day for multiple hours a day, making sure that people are doing stuff the right way. And you know what? Your code for your plumbing is, you know, like the slope of the pipe has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
You're not going to know that. You didn't read the book, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a trusted GC or someone that knows those things, you know that it has to be this way, not this way. And, you know, this difference, maybe it's not going to cost you anything today, but tomorrow when that pipe backs up and you need to rip out the walls and redo it, it's going to cost you a lot more money than if you just had it hired out and had a professional do it right away.
I always say don't try and like save a, you know, nickel to I don't even know what the hell I was just going to say, but saving money, don't be short-sighted. Yeah. You know, I don't even know what the saying was.
Don't step over dollars saving nickels or pennies or something like that.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. You guys can always come in over the top if you know I'm having trouble with that. We're a couple things today. We're currently oh, that's so funny. Let's get into leasing. Tenants are so important. What do you do for leasing? What are you looking for? Do you screen tenants? How do you screen them?
What you buy is the most important thing. Your tenants are your second most important thing. And whenever you're looking at tenants, I think a lot of it has to do with just understanding people and knowing who's walking into the door, how they're handling themselves, what kind of, you know, etiquette are they practicing. And there's people out there that might look one way and actually be a different way, but usually, you know, the car they drive, do they take off their shoes? Do they politely walk through? Do they ask questions? Or do they just barge in through the door? And based on that, I then select on who I would want to continue further and pursue further. And that would be a full application. You know, you're doing criminal check, background check, you're doing a credit check, income verification. So I ask for if they're W-2, I ask for their pay stubs, but even if they're W-2 or not, I ask for bank statements as well. Because sometimes it's really easy to actually falsify like W-2 statements. And those like income earnings
pay
ones.
Stubs,
the pay stubs. It's so easy to falsify them. You can go on any platform and just do it yourself on PDF
on Canva.
And what I do is I check like, okay, did that net earnings, did that actually hit their account? And if it actually hit their account and everything kind of adds up over like a period of 2 or 3 months, then, you know, I know that they're being legit. And usually their credit report will reflect a lot of it. I look for no missed payments or very little late payments, like very little. And I think the other important thing is not calling their current landlord, but calling their previous landlord. I think that's important. And I let pets in now. I used to not be like, I used to be so against pets, and now I let them in. But I have a new rule now. If they come in with pets, I say, look, I don't mind the pet, but let me go see what your current place looks like. You know, because it's not the pet, it's the owner. That's usually how it comes down.
Do you charge a deposit for pets or a cleaning fee or anything like that?
I do. It depends. I did like for one case, I did a $500 refundable pet deposit as part of their security deposit, and then in another case, like, you know, they were immigrants, they didn't have a lot of money saved up, so I said, look, you know, I'll just throw it into your rent. You know, I'll make your rent, you know, $20 more, as opposed to, you know, you coming up with that bigger down payment, so to speak. So
you told me about car cleanliness. Once.
Car cleanliness.
Yeah,
like what, you know, and it's not about their car being super nice.
No.
It's just about like what condition.
The inside, is there trash all over the car?
Yeah, is it beat up? Is it banged up? You know, like what's the condition of it? You know, like how they take care of their car could be a really good indication of how they take care of their house. Because the last thing you want is for them when they move out for you to just have to do that renovation all over again. And my goal is that when they move out, you know, I'm doing the very bare minimum. You know, just a little bit of light cleaning, some paint work and stuff like that, and that's it. And the next person rolls in. And I've actually had instances where when they moved out, it was better than when they moved in because they were just clean freaks. And that's what you want. You want someone who's taking crazy care of your property. You love that. That's the best thing you can ask for.
What about calling not the current landlord, the previous?
Very important.
Why?
Because the current landlord might be in a finicky situation with the current tenant, and they might
Where they want them out.
Yeah, they want them out. They don't want them in there, so they're just going to tell you whatever you want to hear. Oh yeah, they're great. They pay on time. They do this. They do that. Whereas the second landlord, the one before, he has nothing to hide. He has nothing to gain from it. So he's just going to tell you what actually happened.
Yeah. What about time in the market versus timing the market? People are waiting right now. We're recording on October 25th, so this won't get released probably until around election time. People are waiting for the election, end of year. They're waiting to buy. They're putting things on hold, sometimes even longer. But that's like the most glaring thing coming up. What do you tell people that are thinking about buying or holding off on buying?
I think there's a lot of reason why people can be nervous about the market and about what's going on. You know, even simple things like, they're not simple, but, you know, war in Ukraine, war in Israel, like there's a lot of commotion going on that's causing a lot of instability in the world and even in our country with inflation and with everything. And so, you know, people are nervous about that. But, you know, those things are out of our control. And if you're going to wait for the next thing that's going to determine when is a good time to buy, you're just going to keep prolonging that process because there's never a perfect time to buy anything. I mean, besides that 2.25% rate, but even then people were nervous because, I'm overbidding. Oh, people are overbidding on that. People are paying way too much. I'm coming out of pocket for my appraisal, right? So like even then at the 2.25% rate where those people are now regretting that decision, at the time they were saying, oh, well, prices are they're going to fall. Prices are skyrocketing. I don't want to overpay for a property. So there's always going to be something that's going to prevent you from making that decision, from pulling the trigger. And even if you bought at the height of 2008, the global financial crisis, when prices were all-time high and then they completely sank across the board, if you held on to it for 10 years before the COVID boom, before all this crazy stuff, you were still in the green. Yeah. You were still doing absolutely well.
Yep.
You were still happy you bought it at the peak of the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
So if it makes sense and you like it, especially if it's your primary residence, you know, just buy it. Just go for it. You know, you're not gonna wait for a perfect time.
Expand your time horizon. At the end, you got to think longer term.
Yeah.
I think that solves every issue.
Yeah. People look too short. They look like what's going to happen in a year. Like I have clients asking me, well, what do you think it's going to appreciate in a year? I'm like, I don't know.
Who cares?
Who cares?
It's a bad question to ask.
Yeah, like I can't predict that. You can't predict that. Tomorrow the dollar plummets and nothing's worth anything. And whatever's in your bank account's worth nothing anyways, right? I don't know. I can't.
That is such a bad question. And if somebody's asking that or thinking about that, they probably shouldn't be buying real estate. It's got to be a 5+, 10. I mean, it's got to be a 10+ year hold, in my opinion.
Especially now.
100%.
Yeah.
You'll be in the green if you're holding for 15, 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
I always think I'm like a never sell kind of guy. I'm just going to keep buying, stacking, build up the cash flow, and never look to sell. It's not the goal.
And it's going to be paid off at one point.
Yeah, in 30 years.
It's going to be paid off. All that is going to be, I mean, theoretically speaking, if you or I, with the current deals that we had, if we sat around like bums and did nothing for the next 30 years, in 30 years, we'd be set. And that's the case for most people if they buy one or two homes. They buy one or two homes. In 30 years, when that asset is completely paid off, they're going to have so much equity. They're going to have the cash flow that they were hoping and dreaming for, and they're going to be absolutely happy that they went that route. So, you know, everyone wants everything right now, and they want everything in this moment, and it's so incredibly tough to predict. And how many times have people been saying the market's going to crash? The market's going to crash. They've been saying it forever.
Since I've been in business. Yes, forever. I was going to say since I've been in business.
The market's been crashing
forever.
Every year. Yeah.
Literally, yeah.
So
there's always something.
And you know what? It crashes, so what? You're holding on for 10 years. In the worst case scenario, like I pointed out.
Yeah, 2008.
Even if you bought it in that position, you were still fine 10 years down the road. You were happy you bought it 10 years down the road than waiting now and buying.
100%.
So the more you wait, the more things are going to go up, the more you're going to prolong it, you know. And your money in your bank account, it's not doing anything anyways. It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Collecting dust.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. And I'm like reserved right now because I get fired up about talking about this, but like,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, it's crazy. What kind of projects are you working on now? What's the Ardmore
Yeah, that's
single fam?
yeah, it's my most recent one that I picked up. Also picked it up with my father. A lot of these deals I picked up with my dad, like 50-50, I would say. But it's a single-family house, completely dilapidated. And I initially thought about doing maybe a flip on it, maybe just renovating it, like doing some kind of simple stuff. But seeing the area for what it is and that, topic we talked about with location, that's prime location. That's
main line, right?
A plus. Yeah, it's solid. And the ceiling there is a lot higher. So if you're gonna do like I want to dormer it out, and you did something like that recently too. So I want to dormer it out. I want to add some square footage. I want to elevate the property and make it look really, really nice because the value is there. Someone's gonna pay for that, because the location is just so solid. So I want to maximize it and just really, really enhance that property and make it like really nice. But it's gonna be a lot of work for sure.
Did you close on it already?
Yeah, it's been closed. There was a tenant in there. I don't know how she was living in there, but she was, and she moved out recently, and so now we're going to be demoing it. So we're finally starting.
Permits
the
pulled?
project. Yeah, we have. This one is full permits.
Good to go.
Yeah,
But I'm saying it's already done.
no. So I have to first demo it. I have to first clear everything out, and once I clear everything out, it's just going to be easier to understand the picture of it, where I can get different GCs in there so that I can give them my ideas of what I want to do as far as, dormering it or, structural stuff.
I did something similar. So bought a 2-family back in October 23, just finished it. It's renovated, leased out, kids living in it now. We didn't dormer it, but we literally took the roof off, framed the 3rd floor, and then rebuilt it, and put a brand new roof on. Let's start from the top, though. When you bought it, did you have to do a survey?
For this property, no. It's a twin on a very defined
standard lot.
Yeah, it's not like a big lot with weird lot lines or anything like that. It's a square. It's very simple.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes when you buy a property, I bought a 2-family in an area where you need 9,000 square feet to build a duplex. Lot size. Lot size was 13,500, roughly. Let's say 13,000 flat. But there's wetlands in the back. You can't use wetlands as part of the square footage. So when you subtract the amount of square footage from 13 minus the wetlands, 7,800. Now, it was an existing 2-family property, so it's technically grandfathered in. If you were to knock it down, you couldn't build a new 2-family. You could only build a single family because the lot is only 7,800 now. So you get a survey to figure that out. This is what I had to do. Then I bought in a FEMA flood zone. So sometimes I don't know. Is there any flood zones near you? Probably not many.
Yeah,
here and there.
Here and there, yeah, but not like if you're where you're at.
Yeah.
Fairfield.
So with the flood zone, you could only do 50% of the building's assessed value and work each year. Turned out that would have been about $100,000 of work for this project, and it was a 2-1-2-1. So on that property, I'd only be able to do, let's say, $50,000 a unit, which is how I bought it, knowing that's what I was going to do. I found out after buying it, we ordered a survey, and we ordered a flood elevation certificate to see if it's above the flood level or flood line, which I want to say was 13 feet, and it was 13 feet and 4 inches. So it was above the water line that we would need. So if it wasn't, I would have to either raise the house or be stuck doing $100,000 of work. If I knock it down, you can't even build a 2-family again. Because it was above the elevation needed, we were able to fill in the basement and do as much work as we wanted to the property. And that went from being that $100,000 job to taking the roof off, framing a 3rd floor. Instead of doing a cosmetic renovation, we did a full gut renovation, down to the studs. We did electrical, plumbing, HVAC, full cosmetic, new driveway, painting, siding, etc. The whole thing. So to do that work, though, once you get a survey done, you typically are going to get a architect involved for drawing up plans. Yeah. Did you have to do that for this yet?
For sure. Yet? If I'm just doing just the
cosmetic
rehab inside, I'm not changing anything structurally. I don't need an architect. I just need, permits pulled. But yeah, if I'm dormering it, doing exactly what you said, absolutely.
Do you have somebody on board yet, or you're working on that?
No, working on that. So
Awesome.
This is all very early in the process for me.
Yep. So once you get the architect, they draw up the plans. Typically, you'll take those plans and then give it out to bid to 1, 2, 3 builders, general contractors. I have someone I use for most of my stuff. So we sent him the plans. Then once we have the plans from the architect, builder lined up, general contractor, in most cases, will then go to town and pull the permits for you. If you're subbing out yourself, you have to go to town, apply for the permits. In this case, we didn't have to do that. Saves a ton of time. He does the application, package, everything, goes to town, applies for the permits. Then we wait to hear back for the permits to be good. Once permits are okayed by the town, we could start the work. And that's when we started. In this case, we actually did start demo a little bit early around that. Like, we kind of lined it up with permits just because we had another project going on, so this one wasn't even ready to be started. But then the general contractor is able to go in and start the work. And then there's actually, you'll know this, as you're doing the work, the town is going to come out and inspect it at certain steps.
Yep.
So foundation, they're going to do a foundation inspection. Once you frame the property, there's going to be a framing inspection. Then I believe the next one is
mechanicals.
Yeah, what's the 3-letter acronym?
MEP?
MEP, yeah,
Okay.
electrical, plumbing.
Electrical, plumbing.
Yeah, so they'll come out and do that, and then the final one is the I think it's a final inspection after that. I'm pretty sure.
Then you can sheetrock it.
Then you sheetrock it, but they don't come out and check for that. I think it's once everything's done, they do a final CO inspection. I don't know if I'm missing one.
I think, well, at least what I heard, it's once you do the M&P inspection, then you can sheetrock it and start finishing the property.
Correct, and they only come out again once it's fully done to issue a CO.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
And that's like smoke detectors and things like that.
Yep.
Safety stuff.
So high level, you'll need a survey, architect, general contractor to kind of get you through that process. Depending where you're buying too, you might need a structural engineer. You might need somebody, if it's in a flood zone, someone that specializes in that as well. So those are the high level people, I think, where they're doing a fix and flip, big reno, to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, if
the piece of the puzzle.
If you are going to be doing major improvements to the house later on, having that survey, knowing your setbacks, knowing what you can do in that ordinance is incredibly important. And
that's when you have to go for a variance too, if something doesn't line up, we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, because you're based on your setbacks and stuff. Now you have a 100-year-old building that you're trying to, bring up to code or, bring up to today's standards might be a little bit different. I thought it was interesting that you said that when you knocked it down, you couldn't build it up as a duplex again. So I had a thought, all these single family conversion duplexes that are hundreds of years old, that I was like, well, if you can get it cheap enough, knock it down and build it back up, right? If it was already, maybe that you can grandfather that use in. Why couldn't you grandfather that use in?
The property was a non-conforming pre-existing structure. Something along those terms. That's the term that the town uses.
So the zoning wasn't duplex. It was a non-conforming duplex use.
No, the zoning's a duplex there, but because the lot size is not large enough for a duplex.
For today's standards.
It was pre-existing.
I see.
So if it were to be knocked down, you cannot rebuild a duplex.
Even if you hired an attorney or tried to
You would need a variance to do that.
Would it be difficult in that case?
I didn't talk to anyone, so I don't know the answer. You're probably going to be dealing with neighbors that don't want that to happen. There's probably a case for housing. If you made it affordable housing, you probably could get it done. But if you didn't want to do that, it might be a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
There's always a chance.
Because that's the issue with these older properties is that you walk in and the ceiling is this high, and then the third floor has those Cape Cod style roofs, and the layout is incredibly funky. So it's no matter how well you do a cosmetic rehab, it's just going to be weird.
Tough to live in.
Yeah, tough to live in, tough to rent out, tough to sell, and especially you have this nice, beautiful building, a couple streets down that's brand new, 9 feet ceilings, more modern, people are going to gravitate to that more than this.
100%.
So that's why I had that idea of, you either got to dormer it or knock it down. It's really the only way.
Yeah, you got to bring in a land use attorney at that point if you're going to be applying for variances, if you're going to be applying for a zone change. A zone change is much harder to get. A variance is more like a one-off that you could work with somebody to hopefully get.
Yeah, you could talk to the township and they can possibly even give it to you.
Correct. Yeah, and you could go to each town has like a planning and zoning committee, or a
like a hearing board, right?
Yeah, hearing board, not planning and zoning committee. It's a what's the word? I was just talking to somebody on it the other day. But you go when you apply for a variance to that committee, and you could talk to people on that committee beforehand to get like a temperature of like, would this work? What would I need to do? Maybe you need to talk to neighbors, get them to sign off. Maybe you need to get the neighbors to sign off. You're gonna have to give them something, do their landscaping, whatever the case. I've heard of things like that where like
we had that one guy that came to our happy hour who saved the local garden, and it was like not really much of a garden.
Yeah.
But people were going crazy over this garden, and he was like, "Listen, I'll save you this garden. Let me build these 55 townhouses or whatever it was," and they let him do it because they wanted the garden.
Unbelievable. So things like that do happen.
Yeah,
that is so funny. We've talked a lot about online gurus.
Yeah,
listening to people that pump up Burr, pump up Section 8, pump up
out-of-state investing.
Out-of-state investing.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What do you think about out-of-state investing? Because my probably gave you an answer.
Yeah, if you don't know the area, don't invest in it. If you wouldn't live there, if you don't know anything about it, how can you make a decision? Even and they entice you with like, oh well, go invest in the Midwest or go invest in Missouri or Mississippi or whatever, because the houses are like $120,000 and you can rent them out for $1,500. Okay, well, yeah, you're right, because if I buy a house in Connecticut, maybe I'm spending $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 on it. $100,000 doesn't seem so bad, but $100,000 is still $100,000. You're still putting in your hard-earned money into it, and you don't know what you're actually buying. You don't know what kind of people live there. What's the environment? So, before you make any single investment, real estate-wise, you have to know who lives there, what the tenant class is, what's going on in the neighborhood. And I would ask people, anyone who lives in their local neighborhood, where would you buy in your local neighborhood and where wouldn't you buy? And most people know the answer to that question because they've had years and years of experience living there. And how could I know what neighborhood to buy in Ohio? I've never been there. I've never visited. Even if I visited for a week, how can I make that judgment? It's incredibly difficult to make a judgment like that.
It's very hard. And then you run into knowing people in town. So you're going to need contractors. You're relying on one person or your real estate agent or somebody out there to get you contractors. If you need survey, architect, any help, property management company, you're relying on somebody else. You don't know anyone there. If you're trying to buy more property, we've bought a few off market. We've bought a few from brokers off market. So like off market meaning like door knocking, cold call, mailers. And when you call somebody, you talk to them and tell them that you own property up the street, you're from the neighborhood, you know the area, you're able to bond a little bit more, build a little bit of rapport, and it might get your foot in the door. If you're doing that out of state, it's much tougher. No. And people won't think of you first versus if you live in the area, you're always around, you're talking to people. It's like, oh, this house is going to come up. We know you just did this project. It came out great. You should think about buying this. It won't happen if you're out of state, if you're not around and you're not top of mind. So I think that's another thing too that's just very tough.
Look, if you have 50 years of experience, yeah, you can probably buy out of state and pull it off, but you're talking about referrals for agents, you're talking about referrals for contractors. There's people in my area that I don't trust and that could be referred to me. There's some people in our local market that don't understand that if you try to buy a property here, like it'll take 6 months to rent it out because of the local market. So if you don't even know your local market like the back of your hand, how can you expect to know a different market? How can you expect to put your hard-earned money and trust into somebody that you don't even know? Like the best contractors that I've had, the best agents, lenders, it's all come through relationship building and referrals, and through people that have said, yes, I've worked with this guy, I can trust this guy, he's a decent guy. Whereas, out there, well, where are you going to get that referral network? Where are you going to get that business?
Yeah.
So again, someone that's been in the business for a long period of time can navigate that and
Yeah.
they know which questions to ask. But if you've never done it before and you have no idea what you're doing, you're diving into some sort of like
Yeah.
crazy hole.
Yeah. It's tough. It's your first time. It's tougher. It's your first time going out of state.
Yeah.
Just makes it harder and harder. And last thing I want to touch on is the flip that failed that now is a rental.
Yeah.
And just things you learned, advice you might have, give a little details on why it didn't work, because that might be helpful for someone who's thinking about the first one. It's like it failed, but you're also like not in an awful spot.
No, and that's because I bought it at the right price.
Yeah.
I wasn't squeezing my margins. I wasn't trying to force something that could or couldn't work. Like I know that in a worst case scenario, I would have made money on it. And it failed because I didn't get the returns I was looking for. And the reason why it failed was I put it up in October of 2022. And if you remember, that's like when the race went from like 5
started going
to 8 like randomly. And that was a great time to buy because everyone was scared of buying. I should have gotten like $430,000 for that property. I was getting offers for $380,000. And at $380,000, I still would have made, that 20-30 grand. But, long term, I looked at it. I was like, well, I just put all this work into it. I could just rent it out. I could just make, a little bit of cash here and there. And thank God I did that because the market kind of corrected itself. And even if it didn't correct itself in that moment, it would have eventually panned out. And I avoided income tax. Now I have tax benefits with the property. So I actually saved a lot more owning it than if I sold it and made that little
spread.
change.
What do you look at for purchasing a property? I have an idea of price based off ARV. Do you look at anything like that when you're buying a fix and flip?
All depends on what is the asset that you're buying. If you're buying something that was built in 1980 that needs a cosmetic rehab,
Great point.
And the plumbing is still fine. Maybe the electrical needs a little bit of updating here and there.
Yep.
And it's just kitchen, bath kind of stuff like that. Your ARV can be a lot different. Not your ARV. Your purchase price can be
Based off the ARV.
Yeah, based on the ARV, it's going to be a little bit different. Now, if you're buying a 1900s house,
More margin.
You need to fully gut the thing, and now your costs go from $70 grand for 1,500 square feet to $150.
So, what we're talking about is after repair value. So you're making a purchase price based off the ARV. In some cases, you might want to pay 65 to 70% of the ARV. So meaning if a property is going to be worth $1 million at the end of the day, you're willing to pay 60% of that, let's say, $600K, and the renovation is going to be $200K. Let's say. So you're paying $600 for it. You have a $200K reno. After closing costs, broker fees, et cetera, maybe you make $130,000, $40,000.
Yeah.
And that is what you will toggle as the percentage of ARV you'll pay. The 1900 house with a lot of big reno, you're going to need to pay $600. If it's just a cosmetic flip, maybe you could pay $650.
Yeah.
Based off that.
So you can fluctuate those numbers and you can absorb a little bit more of the cost. I don't think it makes sense to get into a flip where you're only going to make $30K best case scenario. Whenever I do flip, I overestimate my rehab and I underestimate my ARV.
Yeah.
So even if I know that the comps are going to sell at $450, like guaranteed, I'll do my numbers at $430. Yeah, God forbid I have to do a price cut, or maybe something comes up, or maybe the heater fails, or whatever it might be that might come up. I'm eliminating that risk from it, because if I'm looking at it as a flip, I need to get my money in and I need to get it out. It's short term. So long term, I can absorb more cost. I can buy things for a little bit more because I'm not in it to make a little, quick buck here and there.
Yeah.
And what I found is that doing the flip, it wasn't a decent area. So me keeping it actually ended up panning out a little bit better. And there's like a little motto that people say, keep the best, flip the rest. So
that's so funny.
So if you're buying
location.
in a neighborhood you don't want to be in, flip it, make the money on it and go and put that money back into a solid piece of property.
The one thing I'll say with Burr, when buying something, you're buying it using a hard money loan, bridge debt, high interest rate, short-term debt.
Yeah.
12-month, 18-month loan, 10 to 14% interest rate, a couple points up front, interest-only payments, but you got to pay it off after the 12 or 18-month or extend it. They typically charge you 0.1% to extend it 3 months or so. Today's rates, let's say you buy a Burr today, rates are 7.5% roughly, let's say, for an investment property, if they were around there. you want to underwrite the deal when you go to, after you renovate it, when you go to refinance it, at would it still work at 9.5%? So if rates go up 200 basis points or 2%, will the numbers still work? Because I remember looking at, talking about this when rates were 4.5%, and they went to like 8%. And
difference.
Huge difference. So you might not be able to hold on to that deal because the cash flow completely lost if you're underwriting it still at 4.5% a year later. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, you run your
worst case snenario.
Always worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Always run it worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And if it works at worst case scenario, you buy it. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You never try to fluff up an investment because you want to try it. I mean, you'll learn stuff for sure, but you're going to definitely get yourself into a hole.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely just, put it worst case, like you said, the rate is 7.5, do it at 9.5. Does it work? Great.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's going to work no matter what. And I think that's why a lot of people with the large multifamily space, they got burned because they got themselves into, you do 4 units and under, you have 30-year fixed.
Yeah.
When you go 5 units plus, you have balloon payments,
Mm-hmm.
5-10-year balloon payments or whatever
Yep.
it is. And then, people got in and they got so greedy with the 3%, 4% interest rates buying like these crazy apartment complexes. And now all of a sudden your rate changes to 8% and you bought on these like crazy low margins and you were making money on those margins. But now any little fluctuation and you're just crushed.
You're spot on.
So
Underwrite worst case scenario.
yeah, definitely.
That's so funny. Anything else you want to cover today?
No,
I think we hit a lot of it.
Don't listen to these gurus, man. The fancy watches and stuff like that. Just buy one property. Most of Americans' wealth is in their primary residence, in their real estate. And if that's the case, if you have 1 or 2 investments, and again, there's no need to buy 65 billion units in 1 month because some guy on the internet told you so, and you want to start driving Lamborghinis tomorrow. Just get 1 or 2 investments. 20, 30 years down the line, you'll be better off than 99% of the people out there.
With each deal you buy, you learn things. Just like anything in life, you learn things, you make mistakes, and it better equips you for the next one.
Yeah.
And you'll actually become more of an expert. You'll make more and more money. You'll never become. Hopefully, one day you become an expert, but you'll make less and less mistakes, and hopefully more and more profit.
You'll get creative.
Yeah.
I bought this one. Well, now I can buy this one. Now I can do this. Now I can do that.
100%.
Just pull the trigger, get 1 or 2. It's more than enough for most people.
I love it. Paisan, thank you for
All
making
right.
the trip up
Thank
from
you.
Philly.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shani.